He will share his cell phone number, so if you needed to be berated and beat up by him occasionally, if you missed that, you can call and get it. I know I've got a schedule already built. Questions that I can answer on anything that I've covered at this point? Kathy?
I'd just like to know if those charts you had are online, or if we can get a copy of those.
The answer is I'm going to make them public after we walk through the full presentation, and so my guess is probably mid-October, and we will make them public and put that information out there, because that, I mean, you as the disciples for us need to have that information as well.
Just
Mr.
an eye-opening remark I got this morning before I came here. One of my tenants, a defense contractor, called and said, "We will not be renewing our lease. Our presence is no longer needed in this community." Now that is eye-opening. That ought to wake us up.
Yes, sir. I probably know, well, I don't know who it is, but I have a sense there's probably some background to that. But yes, sir. Good news is hopefully we'll see something good come out of that.
Hopefully.
Yes, sir. Mike?
I'm confused a little bit about the ongoing budgeting process.
Within the Department of Defense?
And within Congress too, but yeah, what I've heard you talk a little bit before, but if sequester stays the way it is today, and we go into a new budgeting process, and it kind of follows the lines it did this last time, what is the worst case scenario that could happen? I mean, I know that's hard for you probably to get, but I've heard you talk before a little bit about it. I'm just curious.
Let me back up a little bit. There are three possible outcomes right now on the, whatever today is, 12th of September. The first is that there could be a National Defense Authorization Act and appropriations that are passed by both the House and the Senate and signed by the President, that if that in fact takes place, would at least put a budget in place going into 2014. There's no one in the world that believes that's going to happen. The second thing then, for the government to be able to actually work on the 1st of October, because there isn't a budget in place, there has to be a continuing resolution signed, voted on, and signed by the President that will partially fund the government after 1 October. To date, that hasn't taken place. And so right now, there is no authority for the government to operate after 1 October, or after 30 September. Let's assume that a continuing resolution is in fact passed and signed by the President. Then there is nothing to indicate that sequestration won't take place. And so, because there is no grand bargain out there, there's no passage of any sort of legislation that will alter the Budget Control Act of 2011. If that's the case, there are mandatory reductions that have been put in place that are required because of the Budget Control Act of 2011, that irrespective of what is perhaps passed by the Senate and the House in terms of their Authorizations Act, there is a limit which will drive, as Chrissy said, about another $52 million out of the defense budget and be done in the year of execution, which once again drives, as you know as a business person, if I'm going to cut your budget, you would like to have planned for it a year in advance. And the reality is that planning hasn't taken place at the level that it needed to be able to absorb that kind of reduction, in addition to the portion of the reduction that the $487 billion that was already taken out. So essentially $100 billion out of the defense budget for 2014, and have to absorb that in a way that was not properly planned for. That's the worst case scenario. And the longer we go into the fiscal year with the uncertainty of what that budget is going to look like, the more significant the potential impact and the more draconian actions will have to be taken by the services because of the uncertainty until later in the year. That's the worst case scenario I can think of. And oh, by the way, if on top of that there were some sort of military action required, then what you're doing is probably, unless there's an additional authorization done, is taking away from that limited dollars that I just talked about and putting that towards whatever that military action might be, which exacerbates the situation even more.
So when we take our visits to DC and we meet with our legislators in Washington on this message, what do you want us to say to them?
Message number one is sequestration is irrational. It's an irrational behavior with a dramatic impact to every federal agency. It drives bad behavior. It drives dramatic impacts not only to the federal agencies, but then to our communities because of the economic, secondary, tertiary economic impacts in our communities. And we saw that here, and all of you are living proof of that today. That's message number one. Message number two is that what we have to ensure that we do is provide a clear capability or a clear understanding to our Department of Defense of what that budget is going to look like, and then give them the freedom to make the decisions they need given the reduced budget. No one argues that we shouldn't make our Department of Defense budget smaller, but we require for them to be able to do it efficiently, they need more flexibility than perhaps what they've had in the past. And those would be the two messages to our elected officials.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of elected officials,
Yes, sir.
we do have two of our mayoral candidates in the room,
Yes, sir.
both running unopposed. But between Macon and Warner Robins, without any of the candidates even being present here, has there been any outreach from the partnership to either on their end or your end moving forward with
Yes.
1%? Okay.
And our intent, first of all, we're blessed with the elected officials that we have both in our city governments and our county governments in terms of being supportive of the partnership and all that we're doing. And I will tell you 100% of all of our elected officials are supportive of Robins Air Force Base, and I think making sure that we keep Robins a viable entity. We have an opportunity to engage with those current elected officials on a regular basis, but in terms of the elections, in particular in the host community, what we want to do is make sure that those that are running for mayor have a full understanding of what the partnership is, what the current situation is, and so we've already are working to make sure that that takes place and give all of them a fair understanding of what we're doing and how we do it. Let me talk about the elections though for a minute. We talked about two elections. There's a third election. That election is for the union president of the American Federation of Government Employees, and that election will take place on the 16th of October. Right now, they've not opened it up for candidates, so I don't know that anybody will run against the current president and against those that are currently in. But as you've heard me talk about before, one of the critical factors that we have at the base today is a perception that we have a challenge between our union and our leadership at the base. We've been blessed that our 3 local mayors and the chairman of the county commission have been working on both sides to communicate that needs to change. And it may be changing, it may not be. I'm not close enough today to tell you whether or not that's changing. But what hasn't changed is that perception. And so whether it is for the mayor of Warner Robins, whether it is for the mayor of Macon-Bibb, whether it's the mayor of Centerville or Perry, or for the union, the people that we elect this year will be the ones in place as we go into a 2017 bracket. And we need to understand that, and we need to understand that this is a tremendously important election for our community for a variety of reasons, but also for the future of our base. And all three of those elections and the ones we face next year for both Senate, Congress, and the other local elections that we have are equally as important as well. We have the ability, and the folks at the base, if there are multiple candidates running for union, have the opportunity to affect their future. And I'm not for or against any candidate. But what I am for is ensuring whatever candidate there is focused on the workforce out there, but also focused on the future of Robins Air Force Base. And so all of us need to take that approach. We all know folks who are bargaining unit employees out at Robins. It is important that they go out and vote and that they understand that whoever they elect as the union president and as their officers have an appreciation for both sides of taking care of their workforce, but supporting the future of Robins Air Force Base as well. That's more answer than you wanted, but I think that's important to do that. Mr. Israel.
If I could elaborate on that a little bit, just from my own background and experience, the population of represented employees is not what votes for the election the gentleman Dan just talked about. It's dues-paying members that are eligible to vote. Of that population, the winning elected president usually gets around 400 to 500 votes.
Which is about 10% of...
That number of employee votes elects the union president. So that is a population that could be influenced by the group if you will engage and vote for that.
I just want folks in this community, I'm based, irrespective of the election, I just want folks to go out and vote. I want them to vote their conscience. I want them to vote what they think is right. I want them to be educated and aware, but it's important that people vote. Whether it's for the mayors, whether it's here or up in Bibb County, whether it's for the union election, I just want folks to go out and vote. Because
Well,
it
you know
does
how
make-
important that was. Ron and I were just reminiscing in '93, right, '93.
Yes, sir.
It was the union president that showed up right here in front of this museum and made an instant right in front of the news media cameras. So that it can make a difference. I was there and I witnessed it. So.
And again, please understand, I don't know if there are going to be multiple candidates, but I do know that it makes a difference who it is and the approach they pick. Any other questions I can answer? Yes, sir.
I know that encroachment is very important and we should do everything we can to eliminate it. But there's one base that appears to be completely encroached upon and always will be. What overrides encroachment?
When we look at a base realignment enclosure, we look at military value. And it has been the common theme throughout all of the base realignment enclosure efforts since the first one in 1988. The factors that go into determining military value have evolved a little bit, and the Congress and the President, whoever's in place at that time, have the ability to alter that perspective, as does the Department of Defense when they suggest what bases ought to be considered. So encroachment is an impediment to the future of any installation because it impacts the ability to grow. But it's only one factor. There's a whole series of factors that also impact that. It has to do with air quality, for example. It has to do with the ability, and Chairman Sanders sitting up here understood that, and that's why we have this remarkable organization called the Middle Georgia Clean Air Coalition, because of understanding what impact clean air has, working with a variety of folks and putting that out there and helping us be able to overcome that during the last BRACs. That's a factor. We look at transportation within the community. We look at what kind of school systems we have. This is medical capability. Those are all things that the community looks at, which are reflected in the studies that we've done through the regional commission to be able to understand where we stand today in each of those areas, not only objectively, but in a relative sense with some of those that could be competitors if we look at industrial capability in the future. Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Fick, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, a very busy year in the past, and obviously very many challenges as we look towards the year ahead. And I just want to thank General Van Chrissy and Judy for their efforts. We've got a great team in place, and again, I know we speak to the choir every quarter on this, but we've got to be able to support them not only with money, but messaging too. And I think messaging, especially from an election standpoint, is critical, as General Van highlighted. And so let's move forward and spread that word, please. Is there any old business that we need to address? Any new business? General Smith, again, on behalf of the partnership, our best wishes to you and Debbie as you go north and into the hills. Thank you so much for your service, not only to our country, to our base and our community. You're going to be missed very much. And congratulations on being able to be
Maybe go wear his orange tee. I have one.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. See you in December.
Yeah.